Last week we left Jonah and the sailors in the midst of a terrible storm. And how long did that storm last, you know? How long was Jonah down there asleep before the sailors woke him up? The Bible don't say. May have been a while, may have been very few minutes, because, you know, when God can stir a storm up, he can stir up a good one, you know, when he wants to.
It seems like eternity too, it's not that long.
That's right. Yeah. Might have. Might have very well have been there a couple days.
It's been long enough that he had talked to them, because they knew that he's God, and they knew that he told them he's running.
Yeah, they kinda had an idea where he come from. And, you know, Jonah was a Jewish prophet, and, you know, I don't really know how they might have dressed at the time, but, you know, we see Jewish folk nowadays, and ones that really keep to the law and stuff, you know, they dress a certain way, and they look a little different from someone else you might meet, so Jonah looked like that, you know, I wouldn't argue that one way or the other. Maybe he was like us too sometimes. Maybe he might have been trying to blend in. Might have been under the radar there. Who knows? You know, as Calvin always said, we can read things into it, you know, that are not actually written in there. Are they right? Are they wrong? Maybe. But anyhow, verse 8. Then said they unto him, Tell us, we pray thee, for whose cause this evil is upon us? And what is your occupation? And whence comest thou? What is thy country? And of what people are ye? And he said unto them, I am a Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, which hath made the sea and the dry land. And then were the men exceedingly afraid, and said unto him, Why hast thou done this? For the men knew that he fled from the presence of the Lord, because he had told them. And then said they unto him, What shall we do unto thee, that the sea may be calm unto us? For the sea wrought and was tempestuous. So, like Vicky said a minute ago, they knew who he was. They knew he was on the run. It was absolutely, without a doubt, out in the open to everybody to see here now, and they want to know, what is his occupation, and where'd you come from, and who's your people? You know, you put me out in the middle of New York State somewhere, if I say 3 words, I stick out like a sore thumb up there. I do. I mean, you know, they wanted to know, who's your people, you know, where'd you come from? Me and Daddy was talking about that a little bit yesterday, you know, where'd your people come from? And according to Daddy, we may have originated from Letcher County. He really didn't know for sure, and the world may never know, but, you know, where'd you come from? Where's your country? What's your occupation? What do you do for a living, they say. But then Jonah makes it very clear. He's a Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, all with capital L's, and the one which made the sea and the dry land. And here we have these Gentile sailors again that we've been talking about, and they were exceedingly afraid. And somewhere in the Bible, I don't know verse or anything about that where it's at, but it talks about nature declaring, you know, that there is a God. Nature declaring that God made it. And if you've ever seen the ocean, and you can, with a straight face, say there is no God, I think you need to seek professional help. You know, something that vast and something that great, and you can, with a straight face, say that, you know, it just once upon a time it happened, and there it was. I have to question your thinking a little bit about that. And these sailors, you know, they had seen nature. no doubt they'd seen storms, and maybe this was the worst one they'd ever seen, you know? Because God, it says, stirred it up. You know, God sent it there for such a time as this. He put that storm in place there to stir Jonah up a little bit, to get Jonah out of his comfort zone. And
God showing Jonah he couldn't hide.
you cannot hide, can you, Larry? Yeah.
You might think you do soul and get away with it, not what God
That's
does.
right. Yeah.
You sins to find you out.
Even this man understood the power of God.
That's right.
They feared him.
These Gentiles, we'll call them, you know, heathens we'll call them,
Yeah.
you know. They knew who God was. They knew the one that put the stars in place. They knew who the one was that made everything that you stand on. And, you know, God makes a way for all of us. You know, we want to think that we know all the answers, but you know what? Bottom line, we don't. And God loves us every one, and gives us all a chance at salvation. And here He is, giving these sailors that chance. You know, I was through this rebellious little man called Jonah. You know, I always call him a little man. He may have been 7 foot tall, for all I know. I guess all the little pictures I seen as a child have got me convinced that he's just this little cartoon man sitting in the belly of a whale, warming his hands up by a fire. But, you know, maybe that's not what he looked like at all. But anyhow, God's using this rebellious man to preach a sermon unto these Gentile men here, that maybe these men were from Nineveh, you know, maybe, as the saying goes, maybe that's where their people was from, because I did some research on it and tried to figure out, you know, where would sailors would have been from at this time. I couldn't find a source anywhere that said, you know, sailors were from this place and that place. But it does say that these were Gentiles. These were not Hebrews that were sailing this ship.
Well, was Tarshish, was it in Israel land time, or was it in Syria?
I had that figured out once upon a time, Mike, but it leads me as to where it was. I think it's like,
Jonah was kind of probably the northern part of Israel, wasn't he? Is that what he was kind of?
yeah, he was, yeah.
He got up close to Syria, I mean,
And Tarshish, you know, it kind of puts it in perspective, like it was about as far as you could get from Nineveh
Right.
at this time, you know. And that was where that Jonah was trying to get. Maybe these guys were from Tarshish, and you know.
You don't think of Israelites as being, seafaring people.
Right, you don't.
So it makes you, like they had to go to a different
Exactly,
country.
exactly, and all the anything I could find pointed, you know, that they were Gentiles. Where they were from, nobody would dare to comment on
It's
that.
probably just mixed up bunch like today.
Exactly.
If there's a job and you wanna get on a boat and go, you just
That's right.
sign on and take off.
Yeah, if you've ever been on a cruise ship, you won't find anybody that works on that cruise ship from Manchester. They're not on it. They're all, I mean, you talk to some of them and they're from all over the world, you know, but I never found a one that was an American. They were from all over the world. But, you know, maybe these sailors were just like that. They were from all over. And fast forward to the world I live in, you know, you see truck drivers from all over the United States that come into my place. I mean, you know, keep that in mind if you might be tempted to shake my hand, because in lieu of what's going on, you know, but, you know, that's may have been how this looked. Maybe these guys were from everywhere. But anyhow, get away from chasing that rabbit, you know. Here Jonah is, the little guy that didn't want to preach to the Gentiles, to his enemies up there in Nineveh. You know, here he is getting warmed up with his first Gentile message, preaching to these sailors. I'm a Hebrew, he says, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, with a big G. He's calling right there. Tell them who God is, you know. Sometimes we get in our mind that a sermon should sound a certain way, that a sermon, a preacher should preach in a voice, you know, that he makes the windows rattle, you know. Sometimes a sermon is two little words, you know. But there's Jonah's sermon right there. I'm a Hebrew and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven. That's a sermon right there. And there it is, he's preaching to these men. And then move on to verse 12. And he said unto them, take me up and cast me forth into the sea, and so shall the sea be calm unto you. For I know that for my sake this great tempest is upon you. Nevertheless, the men rowed hard to bring it to the land, but they could not, for the sea rocked and was tempestuous against them. Wherefore they cried unto the Lord and said, we beseech thee, O Lord, we beseech thee, let us not perish for this man's life, and lay not upon us innocent blood. For thou, O Lord, hast done as it pleased thee. So they took up Jonah and cast him forth into the sea, and the sea ceased from raging. And then the men feared the Lord exceedingly, and offered a sacrifice unto the Lord, and made vows. So here we have these men, and Jonah's preached the first part of his sermon unto them right here. Tells them who God is and what God's done. And then he tells them in verse 12, every preacher that you listen to, somewhere about his sermon toward the end of it, he tells you how to be saved, don't he? You know, he tells you how to get saved. And right here in verse 12, Jonah is telling them how to get saved. Take me up and cast me into the sea. Kind of like Jesus Christ did, you know. Jesus Christ came and said, I'm going to die for you, and I'll save you. I'm going to die and overcome the grave. That's kind of how Jonah's doing here, you know. Cast me into the sea, and God will have mercy on you. I'm going to be the sacrifice for you. He tells them right here. Cast them right into the sea. But then here we got these old hard-hearted Gentile men that don't care for anything. Here they show that they've got a few morals about them, you know. We think of people out in the world that are, you know, ruthless. And if you don't fear God, then you're a little bit, you know, a little different from me. You don't have morals about you, but that's not what this says here. Nevertheless, the men rowed hard to bring it to the land, but they could not. They wanted to save Jonah. They wanted to save their lives. You know, they had a little bit of care for him. They didn't want to just throw him over the side. They didn't want to just give up and say, well, all right, if that's what you say so. You might want to say, well, if I was there, I'd have pushed him in myself. Would you?
That guy just go get, I guess, sailors leave, don't
That's
throw
right.
nobody over in the water.
That's right, you
Around
wanna-
the ground.
That's right.
That could be, that could be them.
Uh-huh.
That's the way soldiers are today. They don't leave nobody behind.
That's the way they're trained to be. That's one of the Marines, I think it's the Marines mottos, or ever what you want to call it, no man left behind. And maybe that's kind of what these sailors live by. And that's a little bit of morality right there, you know, having care for your fellow man. And they tried and tried and tried, it says, but they could not. For the sea. He did. He did. He knowed why the storm was there. And, you know, there's all kinds of parallels between Jonah and Jesus Christ, you know. Jonah knew that the storm was there. Jonah knew the storm was his fault, you know. And when Jesus was on the earth, he knew that the storm was raging. And he knows that a mighty battle was going on between Satan and good, you know. And the storm was Jonah's fault. The storm wasn't Jesus' fault though. But nonetheless, Jesus made the sacrifice to end the storm, made a way, but they tried and they tried. And then verse 14 says they asked for mercy from God. And they're kind of getting an idea here now of who God is. And that conviction's coming upon them, just like when a lost person sitting under preaching, you know, when the Holy Spirit convicts. It says they cried unto the Lord, it says, let us not perish for this man's life. They don't want to be guilty of taking his life. But then they grabbed Jonah up. You know, I don't know what this looked like. Jonah may have had second thoughts about his time and fit back a little bit, you know. The human nature in all of us might have come in there. Then you think about 7 or 8, 5 or 6 big old stout sailors, you know, grabbed up Jonah and flipped him right over the side. You know.
Why do you think he didn't just go ahead and
Jump in?
jump in?
Would you have?
Well, he knew that's what he needed to do. I
Exactly.
wonder, you know, if that was, he didn't have the,
Exactly.
was scared or
No.
if they had to do it, if that was part of the process.
I don't know, and, you know, here's another thing to think about. You know, Jesus gave his life too, but he gave his life at the hands of men that drove those nails in him. that
But you know,
beat
they
him
had to
them
show
whips.
some faith
Yeah,
to throw him in. They
That's
had to,
right.
you know,
you know, they heard the sermon.
and they beseeched God
Yeah,
to not to have to do it.
yeah, they yeah, kinda
I wonder
like,
if it- I wonder if it ceased as soon as they throwed him in, or.
I feel like as soon as he went under the water, it's over.
Kinda what
I'm gonna say, since that big toe touched the water.
Yeah.
See, he went calm.
Before the splash all settled down, it was over.
But there again, look how many lives he touched by being there, even though.
Exactly.
And you know that had to make a difference on them.
They hauled
Absolutely.
that off.
You know.
Yeah,
Well, verse 16, and stop just a little short at it, but
Yeah.
the answer to that, I mean.
absolutely.
What
Yeah.
goodness it was.
And offered a sacrifice.
I think, and probably a good sermon here, I mean,
Yeah.
this is the illustration of salvation.
Absolutely
You
it
know,
is.
They,
You know, it-
Jonah told them about
Most
God,
of,
you know?
Yeah.
Was it these guys that make, somewhere talk about other gods?
Then I think that they all put the first, the first, all.
Yeah.
Each one prayed to his own God.
To his own God.
Yeah, but
So-
when they went to-
Pray, listen to his God.
Yeah.
So these guys were heathen.
yeah, verse 5. Let's see. Verse 5, the mariners were afraid and cried every man unto his God with a little g. You know, before they woke Jonah up, you know, they were calling on Buddha, they were calling on little trinkets of all sorts that they had in their pocket, whatever. You know, but
And so to answer what Mike said, Jonah wasn't up there, wasn't praying to God.
that's right.
He was downstairs asleep or however that.
Well, apparently they know he was the only person that wouldn't pray.
Yeah, that's kinda how it looks, you know. And probably a lot of ships, you know, at this time, cargo ships or whatever, you know, they took on passengers, you know, to make a little extra money. Yeah. Maybe Jonah was the only guy there like that, and maybe there were several of them there. Jonah was the only one sleeping through that. And, you know, sometimes we in the church are asleep while the storm's raging outside that door too, you know. Sometimes that's the place where we're at, just like Jonah. But then, you know, just like a modern sermon nowadays, as soon as Jonah's, like Jimmy said, as soon as his big toe hit the water, the Holy Spirit showed up, the sea was calm, and then the man feared the Lord, verse 16 says, and offered a sacrifice unto the Lord and made a vow. Or fast forward that to modern day language, made a profession of faith. You know, here they are. They know now who the real God is, the God with the big G. They know who he is. And, sometimes even when we're in rebellion, you know, God uses us, don't he? Jonah was in rebellion. He was on the run, but God still used him to preach this sermon unto these men on this boat. May have been 5 or 6, maybe 25 or 30. I don't know. I don't know how many it was. The Bible don't say. And the world may never know, as the saying goes. But there it is.
Kinda goes to show just how big God is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, you can't, I couldn't explain, I don't know if that's.
Absolutely not.
100% either.
Yeah. But, you know, even in minding your rebellion, Larry,
That's right.
God can still use us. And he's just like he used Jonah there. But now, Jonah's in the water. How long was Jonah in the water? Who knows? 5 minutes, 30 minutes, 2 seconds? Who knows?
Long enough he didn't drown, but God had him already prepared.
That's
for it,
right.
so
He was a captive audience this time. God had his attention.
Well, here's my question on this, twofold, but Jonah, I mean, he's running from God,
Yep.
okay? So he's got, so he knows when the storm comes up, okay, this is on me.
Yep.
Alright, when they throw him overboard, the sea's calm.
Yep.
I can almost picture Jonah kinda floating in the water. going,
Looking around.
Looking around, well, this ain't so bad, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's, you know. I'm going to drown, that's as bad as, you know, as Gilligan used to say, from here on out, looks like smooth sailing.
Absolutely.
And
You know?
then,
Yep.
and how did that happen?
Yep.
Did the whale come up and just crash down on him? B, what did the sailors, did they see him floating in the water and then see
Yeah.
the fish eat him?
Did they see the fish get him?
You know, I just,
Yeah, is he laying there in the water thinking, you guys gonna get me out of here? You know, maybe he thinks he's gonna get back in the
solved,
boat.
okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd never really thought about it that, Jimmy, but since you said it, there it is, you know. And maybe that was, you know, 'cause I feel like as soon as he hit the water,
But if they seen the fish swallow him, they think, well, we would think he's gone.
Exactly.
God has done away with him, so really that kind of,
yeah.
Answers for them, I mean,
Yeah.
for them, the whole testimony, not just the water
yeah.
going calm,
Yeah.
but if they saw him get it.
Yeah.
It's what I'm thinking is.
They had already accepted the sermon, you know.
Yeah.
They'd already made professions of faith, it says, at this point, you know. They'd already thrown them little trinkets they had in the water, you
And
know,
then-
with Jonah maybe.
And then, and you think about this, you talk about sealing the deal, they already become God-fearing as soon as that storm stopped.
Yeah.
They say, okay,
Yeah.
how much more did they start fearing God? And they say, okay, not only are we today, we're gonna obey Him tomorrow too,
That's right.
you know,
Yeah.
when they seen this.
And no doubt these sailors sailed on to Tarshish, you know. They went on to Tarshish and boy, what a story they had to tell when they got there.
Right.
And we wanna always think that,
Whole
you know,
first chapter, there's no way when Jonah is praying to God, is when it starts, the second chapter.
Yeah.
In the pit down in the belly of the whale, he
That's right.
begins to talk to him.
he starts praying in chapter 2, don't he, Larry? But,
He's running from him that first
Well, I
chapter.
know,
so
but he was
he's
telling other men
distancing
about how good he was and everything, but he wasn't
Right.
talking to God for himself.
Right.
He's distancing himself.
you
You
know,
think you thought God might just kinda overlook him? If he didn't say nothing?
oh, but,
John never doubted God, he just didn't wanna do what God wanted.
Exactly.
yeah, but, you know,
He's laying low.
another part of this too is Jonah's still running, you know, he still does not want to go to Nineveh. Don't ever forget this, that Nineveh was Israel's enemy.
Yeah.
These Ninevites are the people that pulled the skin off of you while you were still alive and hung it on the wall, you know, and they were the people that tied a rope to each end of you and stretched you out till your guts fell out. That was how ruthless these people were. And maybe Jonah had rather drown, you know?
Getting eaten by fish don't sound so good.
Yeah, maybe Jonah had rather have drowned than go to Nineveh. And,
They think about going up slow, and thinking like, well, I'm not gonna have to go.
yeah, he might have had that thought in his head, you know, he thought, this is it. You know, it's over.
Well, this is not so bad.
Yeah, well,
I'm dead, I'm gonna be dead, so.
yeah, I'm sure any one of us sees a big old fish coming to get us, we think, well, this is it. This is it.
I think as soon as Jonah went into the water, the fish swallowed him, and it was very traumatic for the
Oh,
sailors.
yeah. You think it happened right then?
Yeah.
Well, it says he was they thrown him in as a sacrifice, so don't they usually, death is part of sacrifice, so.
Right,
I feel like he was swallowed the minute he hit the water.
yeah, he got him right then.
Cause
I
he
very well
prepared,
have.
says God had prepared to.
You seen the videos of the guy on here holding the fish up, and something jumps up from the ground.
He gets it right,
Said now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah.
yeah, maybe.
I
As soon as he went over the rail, there was the fish with the mouth open.
He got it.
Well, no. And then verse 17. Now the Lord prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah. Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. You know, once again, another parallel to the work that Jesus Christ did. And even Jesus, what the words of Jesus that we have recorded, you know, Matthew 12:40, Jesus talks about that. My Bible ain't got Matthew in it. Matthew 12:40. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, it says, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. So, we've had people say that the book of Jonah was just a kind of a made-up book, like a parable, you know, to tell a story that didn't really happen. But Jesus Christ himself said that Jonah was there in the belly of a whale, Jesus says. And if you study a little bit about animals, or fish in general, animals, fish, a whale is a mammal, I guess. A whale breathes iron, and there's several fish in the ocean that are capable of swallowing a man whole. And one of them they talked about in what studies I done, they call it a sea dog. And it looked like a big old snake of a thing, with a big old funny looking head on it that would have been common in these waters. Could have been what swallowed him. And they say a great white shark is very capable of doing this, swallowing a man whole and not even touch him as he goes down. They say they've been accounts of great white sharks that they've cut open, and they've had 3 or 4 fish in their belly that are 5 and 6 feet long, you know. So a great white shark's capable of this. And then they say that whales are not real common in this area that we're talking about. If God told a whale to be there, then one would show up. You know, we're a little bit rebellious sometimes, but nature is usually spot on. You know, then what God told us to do.
You gotta remember, this happened, what, 1,000 years ago?
Yep.
Whales have been there 1,000 years
Absolutely.
ago.
You know, I mean, just because something don't live in a place right now don't mean it didn't used to live here. I mean,
Well, I asked Janet, that verse says God prepared a fish.
yeah,
What does that mean? He prepared a fish. And she said, well, so he put the fish there at the right time.
yeah,
Made him hungry.
and set him apart for such a time as that.
Such a time as this, you know.
Yeah.
And every now and then you will see nature, even now, there will be something that will be where it ought not to be. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's just not usual for it to be there.
Absolutely.
These whales that beach themselves
Right.
for
For whatever reason.
Well, don't you think this whale might have been different on the inside for
And
him
then
to live in
and that
for
was
3
the other
days?
thing I said,
Yeah,
you know, what kind of
he prepared it.
what kind of a genetic defect did it have
Yeah. Well,
Exciting.
that he would be able to.
For now,
We'd have to have
I
air.
know there's some fishing over there, if you want to leave the fish alive, you leave the hook, just cut the line, leave the hook in. A day or two, the hook's gone, in case you, I don't know,
Oh, yeah.
get that quick.
Dissolve it.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Absorb it.
You're right.
I don't, I suppose, I mean,
Yeah.
I,
And,
after that, well, it could, last 3 days, I mean, you'd, arm the hook out of the rope,
it'll-
because it may not,
it'll corrode away, won't it? Yeah, it'll be gone. But, you
Well, they
know,
absorb their food, so he would've been absorbed if it hadn't been clean.
yeah, I mean, a whale, you know, a whale breathes oxygen, just like me and you does. They just hold their breath a whole lot longer than me and you get. And, you know, it says the belly of a whale, you know, could anybody ever, as the old saying goes, try to eat something and it goes down the wrong pipe, you know, you get a little choked on it. Could Jonah have been in the lung of a whale for 3 days? It calls it the belly of a whale, but, you know, God prepared this whale or this fish or whatever it was. And even greater miracle,
He survived 3 days.
He did.
yeah, an even greater miracle than God keeping Jonah alive in a fish, he calls it here, for 3 days is a miracle that he saved my soul, you know. Which one's a greater miracle? You know, which one would be harder for God to do? He's quite capable of pulling either one of them off, you know. But God prepared a great fish, you see.
And that's not to say that he was, your illustrations again, you know, sitting there with his little campfire,
Yeah,
you know, or even sitting there.
yeah.
I mean,
He was not comfortable.
He was not comfortable at all.
No, as we read in chapter 2, I don't guess we'll get into it today, but, you know, the whole book of, the whole second chapter is, you know, have you ever prayed when your heart was broke, that you was in such a place that she was like, you just didn't even have words to pray hardly? That's kind of the place Jonah was. He was, if you read through it a little bit, you kind of get the impression that Jonah had the whole book of Psalms memorized back and forth when you read through some of the things that Jonah prayed. But inside a fish, you know, as he went in, no doubt he seen what he was going into. If that don't traumatize you, I don't know what would. And then those 3 days and 3 nights, and when you're talking about 3 days and 3 nights, it don't necessarily mean 24-hour periods. It might mean 6 hours of the first day, 12 hours of the next day, and 3 hours of the third. And it might mean the whole picture, you know. So how many hours he was in there altogether? Only God and Jonah knows that, you know, how long he was in there. But he calls it 3 days. And like we said, there's all kinds of parallels to the work that Jesus Christ done to this little book here, this little 4-chapter book that's got so much in it.
to him it was the belly of hell. wasn't
It was rough. It was straight up rough, Larry, you know. Here he was. And maybe he was in a place where he couldn't even move, you know. And if you ever woke up in the middle of the night laying on your arm, in your arms asleep, and hang down, imagine being bowed up like that for 3 days. You know, maybe he was in a position like that. And
Like this, God got his attention that way.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. He was a captive audience, wasn't he? He had nowhere to go. And 3 days he was in the belly of the fish. All right, we'll quit right there, I guess. We just got a few minutes left. Anything to add? Anything I've left out? Anything I got wrong?